Good morning. Let me invite you to turn in your copy of God's Word back to the book of Genesis. We are in Genesis chapter 1 once again, and we will be looking at verses 6 through 25 of chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1, verses 6 through 25. Now, while you're finding your place, let me take you way back in time to when I was in ninth grade. Ninth grade. That was a long time ago. And I remember walking into my ninth grade biology class for the first time. Sitting down in front of this teacher that we had all been previously warned by all of the upperclassmen that this was one of those teachers you were actually going to have to pay attention to. She was going to push you. I actually learned a whole lot from that lady, but one of the things that stuck in my mind about this ninth grade biology class was the fact that she had made a statement right out of the gate. And the statement was this: I'm about to teach you what's in this biology textbook, but I just want you to understand that as I teach it, I believe that evolution is simply the scientific way of explaining how God did it. Now, in ninth grade, when you're not exactly sure how all this is going to go, that statement made me feel better. But as I've grown and began some learning of my own, there's a lot of problems with that statement. But I do think it represents this desire, deep-seated desire amongst some people in our society to be able to reconcile, to be able to marry evolution and the theory that brought it about with what the Bible teaches. I get that. I understand, because there seems to be so much that's brought to us via textbooks or via the media that just sort of presents all this forward as being absolute fact that is not debatable. If you doubt it, you're just dumb. That's the way that it's presented. And anybody with a thinking mind in their head is obviously going to come to the same conclusion as the biology textbook. That's the way it's presented. And because it comes across that way, we often jump at the chance to sort of help the Bible, put a few crutches around it, so that it harmonizes with what is obviously truth. Because, hey, if somebody put it in a textbook, it's got to be right. Right? No. You see, there were textbooks that actually said the world was flat for a while, just throwing that out there. Those are out of print now, for obvious reasons. Furthermore, we have been taught that we, as those that have a different worldview from those that often write the textbooks, that we are to bow in humble reverence to the scientists. Because obviously science knows everything, right? Wrong. And furthermore, if you just give science time enough, science will lead you to what's true. Now, let me jump on that statement just for a second. Science could not be a better friend to the Christian worldview when you're talking about real science. Real science. What is real science? Well, real science is science that is not starting out with a preconceived conclusion. Real science, by its very nature, is something that starts out with a hypothesis. This is what we think. This is how we believe that this is going to behave. Now we're going to test it, and we're going to retest it, and we're going to retest it. And after a certain number of tests in a very closed environment, after we've tested and retested and retested and retested, then real science will come to the conclusion that we think we have arrived at a description of how things already work. But once we move beyond that realm, We are leaving the scientific laboratory, the scientific pursuit of truth, and we have crossed the hallway into the philosophy classroom. Once we come to things with preconceived conclusions, and we're only seeking to entertain the evidence that backs up what we already believe and get rid of all the evidence that might speak in a different way. Real science can't operate that way. Real science doesn't operate that way. Which is why that we as Christians ought not fear real science. It's just a tool that helps us dig at the truth. And when done properly, it'll always arrive at what the truth really is. But to take what we are being sold as actual scientific fact, which it's not, but to take that as what we're being sold as actual scientific fact, I mean, it's been proven, right? That's what you're told. It's not a theory of evolution anymore because it's been proven. You know, that's the other thing. Science, by its very nature, can't prove anything. Science is not a means by which things are proven. Science is a means by which things are investigated and in which theories are put forth as to how we think it might actually work. That's what real science is. But when we cross that hallway into trying to help people understand things that science simply cannot test and retest and put through the laboratory, we have somehow infused into science philosophy and religion that simply has scientific wrapping paper around it. But it doesn't change what's inside. Science is the modern day pop culture religion that is being sold to us as fact. And quite frankly, it's outside of the bounds, it's outside of its depth. It's just not. And science cannot really ultimately help us with what faces the human race. The human race really faces four basic questions. And those are the four basic, if you want to think of them as table legs, that support someone's worldview, that lens through which we view the world. One's worldview comes from how you answer these fundamental, basic questions that all humanity, throughout all of the ages, wrestles with. First question is what we wrestled with last week and again this week, and that is, where did we come from? Where did we come from? It's a basic, fundamental question that everybody, including scientists, are trying to answer. The thing is, the implications of the answers that we come up with, the implications have either wonderful or dire consequences to them. I won't spend a lot of time walking through how the individual naturalistic worldview answers these questions. We did that last week, and the video is already online. Just go to our YouTube channel and you can find it there. But where did we come from? Very briefly, if you answer that question in the sense of evolutionary science, that, well, we're just a collision of cosmic chemicals, this long chain of accidental bumping in of amino acids, if that's where we are coming from, then there really is no point in you being here. Because you're just an accident anyway. You have no real purpose. And therefore just live your life however you want, do whatever you want, because there is no supreme being, there is no absolute truth, and hey, you're just a bag of chemicals. So play with your bag of chemicals however you want. Anything goes. When you answer question one that way, it leads to all kinds of crazy ideas and all types of bad things in society. But where did we come from? The second question that everybody wrestles with, if they watch the news at all, is what's gone wrong? Anybody and everybody can take a look at the world and realize that there are things happening in this world that are not good. What's gone wrong? And if our answers to those questions have to do with the fact that, well, we just need to debunk religion because obviously that's what people fight about. We need to debunk the whole economic system and just make everybody equal. I mean, if that's the answers that we come to, and quite frankly we will, if the answer to the first question is wrong, because we arrive at question two, and if I am the highest of highest evolved of all creatures, then that must mean that the problem, it can't be me. It's got to be y'all. It's got to be the environment. It's got to be this. Can't be me. And then we end up answering the third question wrong. How do you fix this? How do you fix it? Where did it come from? What's going wrong with the world? And is there any hope? Is there any hope? How can all this that's wrong in the world be fixed? Well, if the problem is always somebody else, then there's a way to fix that. You either fix those people that are the problem, or you get rid of them. You see, when you walk through these worldviews and you have the wrong prescription on, you wind up in all kinds of terrible places. If you walk through this worldview and the first place you start is, where did we come from? And your answer is, we were created by a creator God whose name is Allah. And what's going wrong in the world is that there are people in the world that do not worship Allah. Well, then how do you fix that? Well, those people either have to be converted or they have to be done away with. Right? Isn't that how we arrive at those kind of actions? It's much more comforting to think that people are just crazy, but they're not. They're just following their worldview. They're just doing what they've been taught. Is there any hope? Well, yeah, there is. And once things are fixed, the fourth question after the first, what does that look like? Or what will the future hold? What does the future hold? Well, if you come at these four questions from an individualistic, naturalist, evolutionist type of background, the future looks like, well, when everybody is equal and there's nothing left to fight about, then we'll all be happy, shiny people holding hands. And we'll have a utopia here on earth. And we've run that experiment for about the last 5,000 years. How's that working out so far? Not too well, right? So how does the Christian world do all this? Let's just put a picture up again on the screen that basically just walks through these four questions. And it's a telling of God's story. It's the acts, if you will, in God's story. Act number one is creation. Where did we come from? Well, God created all that there is. That's what we saw last week. But things are painfully, obviously wrong in this world in which we live. How did that happen? Well, Act 2 was sin. It began all the way back in the Garden of Eden. The disobedience there that has led to disobedience that is spread throughout all of mankind, throughout all the ages. How does it get fixed? Well, if mankind is broken, certainly you can't get a bunch of broken people together and make something that's not broken, right? Any more than I can take the contents of my septic tank and the contents of your septic tank and mix them together and find something that's drinkable. I'm going to slide that in right before lunch. We cannot rise higher than we are, and if we are broken, then we are broken. The problem is not going to be fixed by us coming up with new systems, because broken people are making the systems that will continue to be broken. The people have to be fixed from the inside out. And there's only one person who can do that, and that's Jesus Christ. What does that future hold? Well, the future is a restoration. That's really the four acts that we have. We have creation, we have fall, we have redemption, and we have restoration. Creation, fall, redemption, restoration. Those are the four acts in God's story. And there are people outside of these walls, we think that somehow everybody knows this. No, they don't. They really don't. And we need to be able to take what is in this worldview. We need to be able to help people to see that that's the prescription that really fits. That's how you see the world clearly. And we're starting again with, where did we come from? Last week we investigated verses 1 through 5 of Genesis 1, and we came to the obvious conclusion that God created all that there is. Well, this week we're going to take a look at verses 6 through 25. Then God said, let there be a firmament or an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Thus God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament or the expanse from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day. Then God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and gathered together the waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, the herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the third day. Then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also, and God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Then God said, let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens. So God created great sea creatures and everything living there that moves, with which the waters abounded according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. So the evening and the morning were the fifth day. Then God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth, each according to its kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. All right. Thank you. You may be seated. So last week it's God created all that there is. But now we're getting a little bit deeper. We're coming off of that 30,000 foot level. We're taking about a 5,000 foot level at it. And we're just asking the question, how do you go about that? So a little bit more detail is this. God created all that there is, and God created everything by His divine power. By His divine power. God created all that there is by His divine power. I mentioned three irreconcilable differences between what's typically taught and what is taught in the Scripture. I want to just run through these this morning so that you can understand where I'm coming from. The first one that I see there is this. The Scriptures teach that God created out of nothing, whereas evolutionary science teaches that there has always been something, some type of pre-existent matter from which all things have evolved. We already talked about some of the problems with that last week, about where did the pre-existent matter come from, where did the supercharged gases come from, what caused the Big Bang, and all these things. We've already dealt with that, and I won't rehash that again this week. But I want you to notice what the Bible clearly teaches. The Bible clearly teaches in verses 6 through 25, using this phrase, let there be, and there was. Do you see that? Let there be, or let the whatever, the water, the tree, whatever it is, let there be, or let the something do this, and it was so. 7 different times, and it's implied an 8th time, is an emphasis on God speaking things into existence. Not God taking something that was already there and simply reshaping or reforming. This is what theologians call God creating ex nihilo, which simply means out of nothing. God created out of nothing. Why is that important? Well, let me just give you an illustration. I used to love to watch Bob Ross and the Joy of Painting. Anybody ever watch Bob Ross? Yeah. That guy's amazing, isn't he? First of all, the hair. I'm so jealous over that hair. I would love to have a big, stinking fro like that. I mean, it's amazing. Awesome hair. And then he had a really soothing voice. He had a really bad day at school. Come home, you can put on Bob Ross, and he was, I mean, just chill right out. And he would always start his show with a blank canvas. You remember? Blank canvas. And at the end of a 30-minute show, he's got this amazing landscape painting that's there. And he would say, and we'll take this little lake right here, and you just need a little, put a little tree in there or something like that, right? And we look at that painting at the end of this 30-minute show, and we say to ourselves, wow, what an amazing creation of Bob Ross. Sort of, but not quite. Because technically, Bob Ross didn't create anything. What Bob Ross did is he took some things that were already there and he simply rearranged them in a much more beautiful way. Obviously a God-given talent, one that I do not have, but a God-given talent, take that titanium white and that cadmium yellow and all of those colors, those staple colors that he always used, and he could put them together and just create the most amazing shades and shadows and hues. But don't miss the point. Those things were already on the palette when the show started. And those came from where? Bob Ross was an extremely talented painter and artist. Extremely talented in taking what someone else has put together and reshaping it and remaking it into something beautiful. But he couldn't create out of nothing. Couldn't create out of nothing. Only God can do that. Only God can take and simply speak things into existence that were not there. Psalm 33 verses 6 and 9 say this. The heavens were made by the word of the Lord, all the stars and by the breath of his mouth. He spoke and it came into being. He commanded and it came into existence. Psalm 33:8 says, let the whole earth tremble before the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. When we understand that God can bring everything into existence that we know and have yet to discover, then we ought to stand in awe of who he is and what he can do. And if he can do that, if he can speak all of this into existence, is there a problem that you brought with you today that God can't handle? Of course not. God created it all out of nothing. But that's not the only irreconcilable detail between the theory of evolution and what's taught in Genesis 1. I want you to take a look at verse 8. Verse 8. The very last phrase of verse 8 says, so the evening and the morning were the second day. Your translation may say, there was evening, there was morning, day 2. Doesn't matter, same idea. Everybody see that? Verse 5, you'll see that. There was evening, there was morning, there was the first day. And you see all of these things begin to happen again. Verse 13, so the evening and the morning were the third day. Everybody see the progression? And that happens at the close of each day, as it's described. You have this phrase, there was evening, there was morning, day 2. Evening, morning, day 3. Evening, morning, day 4. It's interesting, though, if you were paying careful attention as we read through the text, you do not actually see the creation of the sun until day 4. How do we track evening and morning without the earth rotation and the sun tracking across our horizon? Well, we can't. How long does it take, by the way, for the earth to spin all the way around? That's right, 24 hours. It takes 24 hours, and we know that it's spun all the way around because we track from either, as they did in the Hebrew culture, sundown to sundown, or in our culture, sunrise to sunrise. It happens. It happens by the sun. How then are we supposed to understand day 1, day 2, and day 3 where the sun is yet to be created, and yet it is communicated very clearly from the lips of God to us through the pen of Moses that there was this time period called evening plus morning equals day 1. Well, some people take a look at that word day, and there was the first day, and there was the second day, and there was the third day, and they dig into their Hebrew, and they say, well, that's the Hebrew word yom, which could mean a 24-hour day, or it could mean an indefinite period of time. And so some people have approached this, trying again to marry science and Bible, and have said, well, since day can really mean anything, couldn't we just say, and all that happened during the first age, or the first epoch, and maybe that first epoch, maybe it was 15 billion years long. Well, that would be perfectly acceptable if you, A, don't believe that God inspired the Scripture and gave us the words that He wanted us to have, or if the phrase, there was evening and there was morning, weren't there. You see, we believe in something called verbal plenary inspiration, which means that we believe that God has inspired every word of Scripture. Every word is there for a purpose, right? God communicates with us through His Word. And so if God inspired Moses to include there was evening, there was morning, what might that meant to communicate? Well, wouldn't it seem to communicate that for us who understand evening, morning equals 24 hours? Wouldn't it just make sense that we are led to understand that God created all that there is in 6 24-hour days? Doesn't that just make sense? And then I know there's some people that say, well, now, whoa, time out. Aren't there some Bible-believing theologians out there that hold to what's called an old earth theory? Yes, there are. And sometimes when I'm encountering one of those people, I love to ask them this question. So you believe that the Hebrew word yom, day, means an indefinite period of time, could be billions of years? Yes. Okay, great. Let me ask you this. Is God able to have created it all within 6 24-hour days? And invariably, they always say, well, sure. Well, then if He can, and it seems that He is leading us to understand it that way, maybe we would just be wisest to just accept what He says. You with me? So there's some irreconcilable differences there. God created out of nothing. And God created all that there is in 6 24-hour days. Well, now, wait a minute, Pastor. Hold on. What about carbon-14 dating? I mean, science has proved... Whoa, science can't prove anything. What about carbon-14 dating? Well, okay, carbon-14 is just an isotope of carbon. Radioactive isotope that breaks down over a certain period of time. We have a really good understanding of the half-life of carbon-14, and so when we find a relic, a fossil, or whatever it is, we can dive into it and we can see how much carbon-14 remains and how much is broken down and have some really good idea of just how old this thing is. But even that is based on a whole lot of assumptions that science can't back up. Think about it. Carbon-14, the reason it is so usable is because it breaks down very quickly, which means that it's only accurate within a few thousand years. So for somebody to hand you a fossil, it wasn't because it's too expensive, but for somebody to hand you a fossil and say this is 3 million years old, you need to step back and say to yourself, how did they know that? Who was around 3 million years ago to make sure that carbon-14 was still behaving back then the way it is now? How many people were around back then? Tell me universal science for how many people were around back then. That's an assumption. That's not testable. And if it's an assumption that's not testable, it's not scientific. That's the way science works. God created everything out of nothing. God created it all in 6 24-hour days. One last, and I'll go so far as to say the most troublesome detail, irreconcilable between evolution and what the Scripture teaches, is this phrase that keeps popping up, and I emphasized it on purpose. Did you run across that phrase, according to its kind? Did y'all see that when we were reading through? And God made the fish according to its kind. And God made the birds according to their kind. What does that mean? Well, I don't know exactly what it means in its entirety, but I can tell you it was repeated 10 times. So either God's not a very good author and can't come up with new things to say, or perhaps he's trying to emphasize something. I'm going with the latter. He's trying to emphasize the fact that fish were made fish. Now, I don't know if that means that God created each individual species of fish, or that God created a fish from which the species, through micro-adaptation, have arrived. But I can tell you this, there is no way whatsoever to take Genesis 1 and say that a fish became a bird. It doesn't work that way. There is no way that you can introduce into this argument what is called macroevolution, that a one-cell organism becomes a human. It's not there. You can't reconcile that with what Genesis chapter 1 teaches. God created everything that there is by His divine power. He did it out of nothing. He did it in 6 24-hour days. And God did not create through macroevolution. God did not create through a long chain of slight mutations over millions of years that somehow led to new species. We know this because organisms are vastly complex. They are vastly complex integrated systems. You can take a look at the human eye. And if you understand how the human eye works, you can't have one part there that helps you to see, and then a million years later another part evolves that helps you to see better. If you don't have it all there working together, it just doesn't work. It's called the principle of irreducible complexity. These organisms that we're looking at, they have to have all the parts there. It doesn't work. And I brought my ice cream bucket today. Doesn't have any ice cream in it. I'm so sorry. But inside this ice cream bucket, there's the parts to a rat trap. Y'all ever used a rat trap before? I want to just say to you today that if we had a rat problem, how effective would I be at catching rats by just taking the base of this rat trap and setting it out there and walking away? How many rats am I going to catch with that? None. Right? Oh, but that's okay. That's okay. Because there's something missing. I'll just add the little catch to it. There we go. I'm going to walk away from it. How many rats am I going to catch now? None. But maybe if I put this hammer on it here, you know, that hammer, that thing that drives the animal protection people crazy because it snaps the neck of the rat and all that stuff. Y'all need to know that. Okay, suppose we just do that. How many am I going to catch now? Why? Because the spring's not there. You see, evolution teaches that I'll catch more and more rats. I will evolve higher and higher if I just continue to add parts to the mousetrap. But you know better than that, don't you? You know that even this little rat trap is irreducibly complex. If all of the parts aren't there and aren't working the way they're supposed to, it doesn't work at all. You already know that. Furthermore, because you know that, how much more ridiculous is it to say, following the theory of evolution, that in order to make a rat trap, you just take all of the parts, put it in a bucket, put the lid on it, and just shake the daylights out of it, and out comes a fully functional rat trap. This doesn't work. Because of the principle of irreducible complexity. If you don't have all of the parts there from the very beginning, working the way that they're supposed to work, you don't have a higher evolved version. You don't have fish 2.0. If a fish that breathes with gills suddenly evolves lungs, you don't have a higher evolved fish. You have a fish that just drowned. God did not create through macroevolution, because macroevolution does not work. It doesn't work. Where did it come from? Well, this idea of macroevolution came out of Charles Darwin's writing called The Origin of Species. It had a much longer name than that, but here's what Charles Darwin himself had to say about it. He said, if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. There's a reference on the bottom of that if you want to go check. That's what Darwin said. Anybody read that quote in your science textbook? I didn't either. Guess what? Theory totally breaks down. There's nothing to fear from good science. Okay, all right, fine. So maybe this theory of evolution is not it's not testable. It's just a theory. So does the Bible give us something that we can test scientifically? Nope. Sure doesn't. You can't go back to the beginning, run it through a laboratory. But I will tell you this. It is more scientific, and that it is a much better fit when you look at all of the evidence. When you look at all of the evidence, it is a much better fit for what we actually know. And someday, when we get to heaven, there'll either be no more questions to be asked, or the questions won't really matter anymore. But I want to leave you with two things today. Two things. Number one, have you come to a place in your life that you realize that the way you once understood the world doesn't quite fit? And have you come to a place in your life where you realize that maybe, just maybe, Jesus Christ is the answer? Or maybe you'd just like to know more about Christ being the answer. Well, if that's you, then I want to invite you today to meet me after service. I'll be standing down front. I'm pretty easy to find. I want to see what questions you have. I would really like to engage in conversation. Not debate, but just conversation. And furthermore, for the rest of you that have already came to that place, you need to leave, and you need to be prepared to engage other people in conversation. If you need to put a mousetrap in your purse, do it. But be ready to engage people in conversation. Let me give you some resources and we're done. Go home. Google Answers in Genesis. Answers in Genesis. Also go home and Google the Institute for Creation Research. Check them out. See what they have to say. If you're a bit more old school and want to have a book in your hands, great. Go find a book named How Now Shall We Then Live by Chuck Colson. Chuck Colson. Or check out The Case for Creation by Lee Strobel. See what they have to say. Get educated on how to engage the marketplace that you come in contact with all the time, to ask them some hard questions about their worldview. If they don't believe in a God that created, how are you going to share Jesus Christ, who is God that created